Are you someone who does fluid art and you're thinking about leading a paint night? Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, it's Anna. Welcome back to my fluid art channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. So you all know that I do tutorials here on YouTube, but I also lead in-person classes. I've been doing that a few times a year since early 2020, and I wanted to make a quick video, some of my best tips for leading an acrylic paint pouring party. That's a lot of P's, paint pour party. First of all, when you're picking the technique, make sure it's an easy one. Now this sounds kind of obvious, but I have been guilty of it myself. Trying to lead people in something that's too complicated, it never turns out right. So make sure that it's something that is easy, a beginner level pour, and something that consistently produces good results. Perhaps not predictable results, because you never know what's going to come up from a flip cup, for example, but something that consistently produces good results. Especially for your first paint night, go with a nice generic technique like a flip cup, a straight pour, ring pour, dirty pour, ribbon pour, strainer pour, swipe. There are so many options that are really easy to do. They're easy to lead people in, easy to demonstrate, and they make great art. Remember that people doing fluid art for their first time, they're not going to have the same instincts or muscle memory that you will have after watching hundreds of paint pouring videos like I have. For example, with a palette knife swipe, you might think, all right, do a nice gentle swipe across the top. And you have some people that barely touch it hard enough and other people that dig way down deep and mess up the design. So make sure that as you lead, you're giving directions to people who have no idea what they're doing. They don't know what tilting is. They don't know when they're tilting that they want to touch the corner and then quickly come back. Otherwise, they'll dump half their paint off the corner without knowing that they need to pull it back. So make sure that you're giving instructions for people who have never done this before. And then obviously be really encouraging about everything that people do at your party. Because sometimes when you've been doing fluid art for a long time, you might do something yourself and go, that's not my best work. I'm not too happy with that. But for them, if it's their first paint pour, maybe they're thrilled with it. So be as encouraging as you can be. It is also, as I've found, easier to get excited about somebody else's artwork than it is about your own. It's easy to see somebody and go, oh, wow, look at that design. And then you do your own and you go, well, it's not exactly how I'd want. So it isn't hard to be encouraging, but make sure that you are. Number 2, this is very, very important. Use the paint mixture, the paint recipe, the paint formula that you have had success with. For example, do not buy pre-mixed paint for your party if that's not what you use at home, because it's going to have completely different results. I'm not saying don't use pre-mixed paint, but don't use it unless that's what you're used to. If you are used to doing a flip cup a certain way, and then you do pre-mixed paint, it's going to end up different. Maybe the paint will be too thin. Maybe it won't react to the silicone the way that you're expecting it to. And so everyone is going to end up disappointed. So make sure that whatever paint you're using, whether you're mixing it with Floetrol, whether you're mixing it with glue, mixing it just with water, however you're mixing your paint, mix it for the party the same way that you mix it at home. It is extra work, but you'll save money by doing it that way instead of buying pre-mixed. So the recipe that you use for your party is going to vary based on what you're trying to do. If you're leading people in a Dutch pour, then maybe you're mixing your paint just with water. If you're doing a flip cup or a dirty pour or a ring pour, maybe you're mixing it with a pouring medium or with Floetrol or with glue. So use whatever suits the technique and also one that you know how to do and you know that it's going to give you good results. As you're mixing your paint up in advance, make sure to calculate how much you'll need. And this depends on the technique. For something where you're going to be tilting it to stretch it, the formula that I use is 1 ounce of paint per 16 square inches. That's a 4x4 square. And that's a higher amount of paint than some people use. Some people do 1 ounce per 5x5 square. I don't know that that's quite enough for tilting. It's good to have a little bit more than enough. So I like 1 ounce per 16 square inches and then go just slightly above and beyond. Especially because if you're putting your paint into little cups like this, multiple colors, it's hard to get every single drop of paint out of there. So, for example, this is an 11 by 14 inch canvas, and I don't have this in my head. I calculated for an 8 by 10. 8 by 10 is 40 square inches. Divide that by 16, you get 5. So you'd want at least 5 ounces of mixed paint for an 8 by 10 inch canvas. So then you think about, all right, how many colors is each person having? If they're going to have 5 different colors, then each color needs to be at least 1 ounce, maybe an ounce and a quarter. If they're only going to have 4 different colors, then they have to be at least an ounce and a quarter per color, if not an ounce and a half. So giving people just a little bit extra helps to make sure that they have enough. And if they're going to be putting down a base coat first, make sure that they have plenty of that base coat. I like to use a digital scale. My scale's a mess. I like to use a digital scale while I'm mixing my paint, but it's also really helpful when you're measuring it out into the cups, because you can just stack 3 or 4 cups on there and pour in exactly the right amount, and you don't have to worry about like, what's the volume? You just measure by weight. So once you've mixed your paint up in big cups, like 20-ounce cups, then you can put it into these smaller cups with lids. So these, I like to get them at Walmart. You can buy them at other grocery stores as well. So these are like sauce cups. And then these ones, I think they're called snack cups. And so you can buy bulk packs of those for not terribly expensive. These hold 2 ounces, these hold 5.5 ounces. For most of my parties, it's been these little cups that I've used, unless you need a larger amount of something like a base coat, or you're doing like a space-inspired flip cup and you want a lot of black paint, then you'd give them a big cup of the black paint instead of a small cup. But you mix your paint up in bulk, pour it into the lidded cups, and then if your technique uses silicone, put a drop of silicone in each cup that you've got. Or if you prefer to use more silicone than 1 drop, add more, but make sure that the silicone is added to every cup. And then I like to label the tops of my lids with an S if I'm using silicone. That way, any leftovers that I might bring home after the paint night, I know what includes silicone and what doesn't, and I'm not going to get them confused when I'm using them in future pours. In terms of your colors, if you have promoted your paint night with a particular design, like come make this blue and green flip cup, or come make this pink and brown swipe, or something like that, make sure that you have plenty of those colors so that if people want to come and specifically recreate the painting that you've shown them, that they can do that they can just grab that stack of colors. But I also like to have some other colors on the side so that people can customize their own pour. So for example, I did a water swipe, and this is the picture that I used to promote it because I love that color combination. So I had plenty of those colors, but then I also had some other ones. I had some pinks and some purples and some golds and other things, so that if people wanted to say, all right, I'll do blues, but then I'm gonna add some purple, or I'll do these, but then I'll add gold instead of this other one, then they can really make it their own. So try to have more than enough cups of paint so that people can do what they want. Number 3, keep your location clean. This probably goes without saying. Fluid art is messy, and you want to make sure that if somebody is allowing you into their space, whether that's a coffee shop or their living room or whatever, that you are adequately protecting the tables and also the floors if necessary. Obviously, you want to protect the tabletops with plastic tablecloths. Now, some surfaces underneath, they're easily wipeable, and it doesn't matter if a tablecloth happens to rip and some paint gets through it. But if you're painting on a surface that really shouldn't get any paint on it, do a couple of layers of tablecloths, and that will protect it much better. If your paint night is going to involve everybody doing maybe 2 paintings, a great thing to do is to put 2 tablecloths on the table to begin with, or even 3 if you're wanting to leave 2 underneath. With the multiple layers, you can do the first pour, and then you can just pull up that top painty tablecloth, throw it away, and you've got a clean tablecloth underneath ready for the next pour. You also want to think about what technique are you doing. If you're using a hair dryer or a spinner, for example, are those going to whoosh, blow paint or whoosh, spin paint off of your table, onto the floor, onto the wall? So just think about that. If you're using techniques that are particularly messy, how are you going to protect the room? I don't like doing paint nights where the floor isn't wipeable. So hardwood, laminate, linoleum, concrete, something that can be wiped up and cleaned off if paint drips on it. I would get very nervous about painting over carpet. I think if you were going to do that, I'd want to put down cardboard or something like that that's more durable for people to walk on. And finally, set up a drying area in a secluded portion of that building. Maybe that's a hallway, maybe it's a back room that nobody's using it, maybe it's some shelves, but make sure that the surface is perfectly flat so that as the canvases are drying, the paint isn't going to run off the sides. That's super disappointing. So make sure that it's nice and secluded, and then lay down more tablecloths or drop cloths or cardboard or something so that the paintings can sit for a couple of days and dry. Number 4, provide all of the necessary materials for the party. Now this includes, you can see I have a whole bunch of stuff on my table. This includes canvases, of course, the mixed paint, popsicle sticks for stirring, thumbtacks for putting on the back of your canvas, which helps hold them up, cups that they need for pouring, some water in case the paint isn't the right consistency, something that they can write their name on the back of their canvas ahead of time, gloves, aprons. I don't like to paint in gloves personally. I like to just wipe my hands off afterwards, but it's a great thing to provide these, especially for people who care more about their nails than I do. Paper towels or baby wipes, something that they can wipe their hands on and help keep themselves clean is really important. And then of course you also want to provide any tools that you need, like strainers. If you're doing a strainer pour, try to have a strainer for every single person. Same with palette knives. Try to have plenty so that they don't have to be sharing. Or swipers. You know, if you're doing a big swipe, make sure you have enough swipers for everybody. For the aprons, I bought some cloth aprons. I think I bought them on eBay. It was like a 12-pack, and I haven't had any classes that are more than 12 people. Those are nice because they can be reused. But before I invested in the cloth aprons, I found disposable aprons that you can buy by the 100-pack. And those aren't too expensive. Those are nice also if you're making like a kit and you don't get to get the apron back at the end. But the plastic disposable aprons, they're very fluttery and not very flattering and fun to wear, so I like the cloth ones better. I like to lay out all of the materials that they'll need at their place in advance of the party. So I like to put their canvas in front of them, the sticks that they'll need, the gloves, the aprons, the tools, everything there except the paint. The paint I keep on a separate table so that as they arrive, everybody can select their colors and bring it to the table. But make sure you have some paper towels like already ripped off the roll so that it's very easy to grab. But yeah, just have it laid out in advance and that'll make it really simple for people. Number 5, running the actual event. How do you do it? So this is my preferred format. I like to have everybody arrive, they pick their paint colors, they get set up, and then I have everybody prepare their own supplies. So they would put the thumbtacks on the back of their canvases, they would open up all their cups of paint, stir them. That way, if you've got silicone inside, the silicone gets mixed in. I tell them to sort of, you know, do the stir and let it flow off the stick. That way they can kind of get a feel for the consistency if one of the paints is much thinner or much thicker than the other ones, or if there happened to be an accidental lump in their paint, they could pull it out then. So I have everybody do that first, prepare their canvas, mix up their paints. Then I demonstrate how the pour actually goes. So I have my own paint, my own canvas and everything. And as I do it, I explain to them what I'm doing. All right, I'm gonna layer up my cups one at a time. It doesn't matter what order you do, that kind of thing. And then you show them, all right, so I'm gonna do it like this, and then I'll flip the whole thing over, and then I lift the cup, and you know. So you narrate as you go, and they see what you're doing, and that way you're showing them the entire process, because a lot of people haven't watched a single fluid art YouTube video, and so they don't know what they're doing. So you can show them what to do, and that way they have an immediate point of reference when they go to do it themselves. Once I've demonstrated the pour, then I let everybody else start on theirs while I kind of move around the room, giving tips and reminders of what the next step is. All right, you'll want to pick it up and start tilting it around. Make sure you get your corners covered. things like that. People will probably have some issues. Oh no, too much of my paint ran off, or oh no, I did something wrong. And so then you'll help them troubleshoot if that happens, and possibly even restart if it's a really bad problem. But for the most part, you can just kind of guide them and say, oh, why don't you try a little bit of this, or bring it a little bit farther before you tip it back, or something like that. Once people have finished their painting, I'm the one who does all of the moving because I think of the liability of it. If everybody's carrying paintings and then one of them gets dropped or one of them gets bumped into in the back room, whose fault is that? It's my event. If somebody else messes up somebody else's painting, oops. So I carry all the paintings. That way, if something gets messed up, it's my fault. And that's pretty easy. And so usually once they finish, I'll be like, all right, go have a snack, go have some refreshment, whether that's at the actual venue that I'm leading the class at, or maybe I've provided snacks for them, but that way they can relax and have their refreshment, and I'll take care of transporting the paintings and starting to clean up the tables. Now you might be wondering, where do I do this? How do I do this? So there are different ways that you can lead paint nights. Maybe it's one that you just do for yourself and your friends. Maybe you have 6 or 7 friends and they've said, hey, we'd love to do this art that we see you doing. Can you show us how to do it? And so maybe you have them all into your home and you say, all right, can you each pay $20 to help cover materials and I'll lead this party? Or maybe you do a paint party for a specific event, like a bridal shower or a birthday party or something like that, where maybe it's not all your friends, but it's for somebody that you know. If you're wanting to expand to the wider community, look for a local business like an ice cream parlor or a coffee shop or some kind of place, especially that serves food is great, food or drink, and ask whether you can do an event there. So this is a particularly good thing for a collaborative event because a shared cost can have them paint and also get, an ice cream or a cup of coffee or whatever it is that place sells. So it draws in new business and it does something fun. The nice thing about hosting your paint night at one of these places is that they want it as much as you do. They get the benefit of having a fun, interesting event in their shop, and you get your party hosted. You could also try a local community center or a gym or a library or some other thing that doesn't involve food, but maybe they have a nice space and would be interested in doing a special community event. Once you've picked your venue, you can advertise on Facebook. You can create a Facebook event and, share it with your friends. You can also make flyers or posters and put them up on local community bulletin board kind of things. I know in my community, we have certain places like at the grocery store or other things where you can put up your things to advertise. So find a spot like that where you can reach your community. Now here's an alternative to in-person paint nights. If for some reason you can't figure out how to make that work, you can go virtual. So I told you that I've been leading these paint nights since early 2020. Guess what early 2020 was? Yeah, it was the pandemic. I had 2 in-person paint nights and then the world shut down. And I was like, oh, I was planning on doing a whole lot more of these. And so instead of leading in-person group events, I started making box kits and people would pick them up from my porch and then we would all follow on a Facebook Live video. So that was really fun. So what you can do if you decide to go virtual, it's really best if people can pick these up in person instead of mailing them, just because these cups of paint, I wouldn't trust these in the mail. I think if you were going to ship something, it would have to be a much more secure container. But you could ship. I mean, everything else you could ship. But it's really best to do it locally if you can. But you want to provide everything. Just like with the in-person paint night, the canvas, the sticks, the paper towels, the everything, make sure you include a tablecloth for their kit so that they don't even have to do that. You want them to be able to unpack the box and have everything that they need for this paint night. In terms of leading the virtual paint party, Facebook Live video is a pretty good way of doing it because it's happening live. People can comment as they go along, like, wait, I'm not ready. I'm not at that stage yet. Hold up a second, and then you can wait for them to catch up. Or you could do perhaps Zoom if you want to be able to see everybody. It depends on whether you want people to be able to see you or whether everyone should see everybody. So kind of pick your format based on that. And if you can't get everybody involved all at the same time, another option would be to film a tutorial video by yourself and then put it on Facebook or YouTube, and then give people the kit, and then they can just watch that video and paint along with it on their own time. So that's all my tips. Let me know down in the comments, do you have any other questions? Have you led a fluid paint night? How did it go? Thank you all for joining me for this video. I hope it inspired you to try something new. Best of luck with all of your future paint nights, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.